Hello and welcome to Box, the football talk show brought to you by Sportology TV. I'm Ali Drew and this is my co-star Ouney.
Guys, welcome to Box. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about this show. We'll be talking everything to do with the Premier League. We'll be talking about the champions, the race for the top four, the relegation battle, and everything in between. And we're going to have a lot of special guests on, but today, Ali, we pulled it out the bag, haven't we?
We've gone all out today.
We've got one of the biggest YouTube personalities that's been on the football scene for the last couple of years. I think he's blushing at the moment. Let me tell you about, well, I don't even need to introduce him no more. It's DT from Arsenal Fan TV.
DT, thanks for joining us.
No worry, the check's in the post.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, considering Arsenal are so rubbish at the moment. I'm just getting on with things, just trying to get back to some kind of normality after lockdown. It's, a very strange time for everybody, and where we're so football orientated, it's been a really difficult 3-4 months because, everything's been taken away from us in that respect. Some people have likened it to pre-season, but I don't really see it as being pre-season because you still have football matches. You can go on holiday. You can, go and do normal things. But this has just been, no football, no holidays, just lockdown, doing what Boris tells us to do. So
crazy times when you got to listen to Boris, right?
Yeah, well, it definitely. And, if you look at some of the directions that he's put out there, I don't think anybody knows whether to listen to him or not. We're told to go out, stay in, go out, go shopping, stay in. Yeah, it's one of those. It's strange times. 2020 has definitely thrown up a few spanners in the works, shall we say. But we just have to deal with it.
Well, you're very well known in the football world, obviously YouTube star. You get incredible views on your videos. But I just want to ask sort of how you got into it in the first place and how it's changed your life.
How I got into it was Leicester away. I think it was about 5-6 years ago now. I came out of the grounds. Arsenal had just drew. It was a couple of days before the transfer window was finishing. We hadn't bought a striker. It's like I'm repeating myself. It's still evident now that we're still needing players in certain positions. And I came out and Robbie was doing his interviews and AFTV was, just coming onto the scene. It wasn't where it is now. Robbie was standing there with a microphone, just holding it, looking around like, anybody want to say anything? And I came out and I was raging and I was like, yeah, you know what? I want to say something. So I just went on, voiced my opinion, had a little look at the feedback afterwards and people were like, who's this guy? He's brilliant. Get him on again. It's nothing like that now. Some of the comments I see now. But I was like, yeah, you know what? This is really good that you've got a platform where you can just voice your opinion without people cutting you off. Because I've done, 5 Live, Talk Sport, that kind of stuff before, and you get about 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and then you get faded out and cut off, and you can't really get a chance to say what you want to say. But this was a chance to voice an opinion on a channel that was your club orientated, specifically for you. And as long as you don't cross a line with what you say, you won't get cut off. You can genuinely express your opinions and your thoughts. So that's kind of where it started. And then it just escalated from there. And I think about a year to year and a half later, I had a video that went viral. And from that moment, it just skyrocketed, went through the roof. And in terms of changing my life, it's, I'm in a position now where this is what I do for a living. I talk about Arsenal. I can rant and moan or be happy, laugh and cry. And, football's all about opinions. And, I'm in that position, like I said, where I get to give my opinion and a lot of people listen to it. Rightly or wrongly, people will agree, disagree, but that's the beauty of the sport. And, I can't go anywhere now walking down the street without people noticing me, recognizing me, wanting photos. And I still find that weird. People coming up to me and saying that you're an inspiration or you're this, that and the other. Young kids as well, 12, 13, 14, that are all into YouTube. And I look at them and I think, oh, I hope you don't, repeat some of the things that I say in terms of the language and whatnot. But yeah, I find it weird because I'm very old school. I'm still trying to adapt to modern technology in many respects as well. But I realize now that YouTube's a big part of people's life. When I was growing up as a youngster, it was the footballers that were my idols. And, you would do everything you could to meet your idols and wait outside training grounds or football stadiums or whatever. But now the youngsters, it's about YouTubers.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's so strange. I've even been at a game before where I had Ray Parlour standing next to me. This is an invincible of Arsenal. And a young guy's walked up and asked Ray to take a photo of me and him. And I'm looking at him like, that's Ray Parlour. That's an invincible. You should be asking me to take a photo of you with him. But he hasn't got a clue who it is.
We live in that era now, man. It seems to be all social media orientated. YouTube's like one of the biggest platforms. Even myself and Ali, we've been working on YouTube in the boxing scene for myself for the last 5 years. Ali's been there for the last couple of years. But DT, we called you on for a reason to talk about your beloved Arsenal. I wish we could talk and be a little bit more happy, but we're not going to start for that, unfortunately. I need to go back to Sunday, the North London derby.
Do you have to?
Yeah, we're going to have to. I'm so sorry about this. But the North London derby, you guys dominated. It seems with Arsenal there's a mistake in them. And it showed in that game that there was a mistake in them, which led to the first goal. Just give me your opinion on that game, and it's just your reaction to just losing a game that you should have won.
It's very Arsenal-like that we lost the game and how we lost it. We go from jubilation to, complete despair within the space of 60 seconds. Lacazette scores an absolute rocket and I think I'm still celebrating. I'm in the middle of texting a load of my Spurs mates, laughing. And then you just watch the most calamitous defending you ever see. And I've said to a lot of people, I could honestly go into non-league football and find better defenders than what we have at Arsenal. And I'm not even joking. I'm not even being angry, and it's not reactionary. It's genuine. I could find better defenders. They're clowns. And it's simple schoolboy stuff. It's a 5-yard pass. And it's very clear that Kolasinac doesn't want to use his weak foot. And I still don't get how a player can be on over 100 grand a week and he's got 1 foot.
I agree.
I don't get it. It's simple stuff. If you've got a weak foot, go and practice. Go and learn. Go and make that weak foot better so that you can, complete simple passes. It was such a simple pass into David Luiz. He gets caught flat-footed, and then Son goes through, and then it's 1-1, and then it's just like, what's the point? If I was a striker of Arsenal, when you look at Obar and Laka and stuff like that, you'd be sitting there looking behind you going, really? Come on. We're doing all this up here, and then we've got you idiots doing what you're doing back there. And there's always a mistake in Arsenal's defence. And you look at Spurs' game plan. It was very simple. Long ball, over the top. Because Mourinho said, we ain't going to be able to play better football than them. They're very compact. They're very aggressive. The way that we press and everything else now. So play the ball over the top, because you know what? They got a mistake in them. Let's try and get dead balls, free kicks, corners, and see what we get. Because Arsenal have conceded more goals from dead balls than any other team in the Premier League. Yeah. Where the Spurs go and get their second from a corner. It's just so Arsenal-like. And a lot of games I've taken positives out of because we've played well. But because it's Tottenham, I don't take any positives out of it. I hate losing to them. People know my feelings on Tottenham. I hate them. I hate everything about them. I hate their badge. I hate their stadium. I hate their players. I hate their name. I hate their kit. I hate everything. But you ask a Tottenham fan, they'll say the identical thing about Arsenal. It's rivalry. It's rivalry. It's in our blood. So I'm just so gutted. And I just want this season to end. I just want to get over what we've gone through, because Mikel Arteta's still not had his own summer transfer window. A lot of people forget this. January he had a transfer window, but he'd only been in the job about 2-3 weeks. He had no real time to implement anything. And January is never a window that you go and make a big statement anyway.
Yeah.
So I really want to see what Mikel Arteta can do when he's got a couple of transfer windows behind him and he's got rid of players that he clearly wants to get rid of and players that are eating up at our wage bill, that are trying to repair the 5-6 years of rubbish that we've been left with. And that's what it is. We're making up for those errors.
Aditi, just talking about your wage bill there, there's talks about, sort of contract renewals for certain defenders. We know David Luiz has just been renewed in contract, and that's got such a mixed reaction from Arsenal fans. There's talks about Mustafi renewing his contract. Just give me your thoughts on that, because you're talking about Arteta building his team, but there's renewals of players that are making mistakes, players that Arsenal fans don't really want in their team. Just talk to me about that.
Well, I'll go on to Mustafi first. And the issue with Mustafi is that he's actually been playing really well. But then against Spurs in the final 15 minutes, you saw the Mustafi of old. This guy dives into anything. You could nickname him Tom Daly. It was just ridiculous. You're like, oh, what is this guy doing? It's schoolboy. It's so amateurish. And it's why Arsenal fans didn't want him in the first place. He's always got that in his locker. And we thought, you know what? He's got out of it because he seems to be very accomplished under Mikel Arteta. He's not jumping in anymore. He's not being rash. And then it all just came out in the worst possible way and against the worst possible team. And now everyone's looking and going, nah. You know what? Nah. We need someone that's not going to fall back into the old ways and make those mistakes. If we had a top draw centre-back, like a Virgil van Dijk, for example, we use him as an example all the time because he's the best defender in, the Premier League at least. Everyone will have a debate as to who's the best in the world. Yeah. But if you had a Virgil van Dijk, then the likes of David Luiz and whatnot wouldn't actually be bad additions to the squad. Yeah. Because you look at Liverpool, and when you take, for example, Joe Gomez out of their side, who has mistakes in him, you have Lovren. Now, Lovren is Liverpool's equivalent to Mustafi and David Luiz. Yeah. He's awful. But because he's got Virgil van Dijk and he's got Andy Robertson and he's got Trent Alexander-Arnold, you don't notice it. And it's every now and then you might see the mistakes and it might have an effect on the result. But overall, them other guys get him out of it. But the problem with Arsenal is that we don't have that imposing defender. We don't have a Virgil van Dijk. And when you put so many clowns in a room, you end up with a circus.
Fair enough.
Things have been slightly better since Arteta took over. Up and down, but slightly better. Do you think that, Arsenal have performed better because he's been there, he's been in charge?
Yeah, I do think that he has performed, up to certain levels with the players. And we've got before Sunday's game, we had the same amount of clean sheets as Manchester United, for example. They just spent 80-odd million pounds on a big square-headed defender who's constantly doing something wrong. So there was signs, there was improvement, but I referenced it on AFTV and I said, you can't polish a turd. And there's only so much you can do, and he's working with what he's got. Yeah. Remember when Jurgen Klopp took over at Liverpool? He had the likes of Jimmy Traore in his ranks. And I see an image the other week where someone said this was Jurgen Klopp's first starting 11 when he joined Liverpool. And I looked at it and I went, oh my God, were they that bad? Was it really that difficult? And Jurgen took over Liverpool, at the start of a season, when the season had already begun. They finished 8th that year. And then he started to implement his ideas. And if you wasn't on board with what he wanted, you were out of the door. And the biggest, name out of all of that was the casualty was Coutinho, because he was very evidently a player that despite his talent and how important he was to Liverpool, he was someone that was clearly wanting a move, clearly wanted to go to Barcelona and wanted something else. And Jurgen Klopp looked at that and said, doesn't matter how good you are and how much of a miss you will be, you're going to upset this squad and upset what we want. We only want players that are 100% committed. Bye-bye, out the door you go. And they were able to use that money to go and bring in, players in the area that they needed. Their biggest weaknesses was centre-back and goalkeeper. They bought Virgil van Dijk and they bought Alisson. They bought Trent Alexander-Arnold through the ranks. They bought Robertson from Hull. And I bet when they bought him from Hull, everyone at Liverpool had their arms up in the air. Oh, who's this guy from Hull City? What's he ever going to do? We're never going to compete or dominate with this rubbish. And it just shows what you need to do. They bought Wijnaldum from Newcastle. Again, not a huge name where you go, yeah, that's going to be the standout. Even Mo Salah, when they bought him from Roma, the instant reaction was you're paying nearly £40 million for a guy that's already failed in the Premier League. What's he going to do? There you go. It's one of the best players in the Premier League. When you bought Sadio Mane from Southampton, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just another guy from Southampton. They're just buying their whole team. What's he going to do anyway? Yeah, he was all right at Southampton, but the moment he takes that step up, he's not going to do anything. For me, Mane is Liverpool's best player.
Yeah, 100%.
Out of the attackers. Salah gets the plaudits, but for me, Mane's the most important player for them. And, look at it now. European champions, world champions, Premier League winners. I'm not saying that's where we're going to be in 5 years, but that's the model that we have to try and emulate. I still remember Liverpool drawing with West Brom and Jurgen Klopp taking all his players over to the Kop and all doing the hands in the air.
Yeah.
And everybody laughing. But Jurgen Klopp had an idea as to why he did that. He wanted to show togetherness. He wanted to show the fans that stick with us and you will be rewarded. And there you go. They've been rewarded. I wouldn't mind a Champions League and a Premier League and everything again.
DT, I wanted to ask you first just one of two questions. You were talking about Liverpool there and Trent Alexander-Arnold coming through the ranks. You've got a couple of youngsters coming through the ranks yourselves in Arsenal. One of the biggest ones is Bukayo Saka. And there's Gabriel Martinelli as well. Them two players seem to be the standout players when it comes to the youngsters that you've got. Obviously, Martinelli you've bought in, but still seems to be one of the biggest names that every Arsenal fan talks about. Are these two players in particular the way forward for you guys to achieve top four and challenging for the league?
Yeah, I think they are because, it doesn't matter how young you are, if you're good enough, then you have to play. And I think that Martinelli and Saka are the two youngsters that have really stepped forward and made a real name for themselves. You've got the likes of Eddie Nketiah, Joe Willock, Reece Nelson, and they've kind of played in bits and pieces and kind of contributed in certain aspects, but they've never really been one of the main men. Martinelli and Saka are two of the players that have really stepped forward in what has been a dreadful season. This is our worst season in 25 years at Arsenal. Arsenal have not finished outside of the top 6 in 25 years. So this is easily our worst season in the Premier League era. And yet you've got two 18-year-old kids that are showing the men, let's put it bluntly, what to actually do. And Martinelli, what I like about him is that you can tell that he's one of these South American footballers that's not had anything handed on a plate to him. He's grown up in a tough area on the streets and he's had to work for what he's got. And he's literally looking at it and saying, I've got the chance of showcasing and being in the Premier League and I'm going to grab this with both hands. And he's done exactly that within his first season. And again, he was our first signing last summer.
Yeah.
And I remember that signing. And so many people, probably including myself a little bit, were like, oh, here we go again. Another player that costs a couple £1 million. Oh, bargain basement, shopping in Primark as usual, and all the rest of it. But go and have a look. He's probably been our best signing out of it. And then Saka, he's a Hale End boy. He's come out of the academy, been here since he was 7 years old. And when you've got a history of blood in youngsters, the way that Arsenal do from the 80s with Mickey Thomas, Rocky Rocastle, right through to the likes of Jack Wilshere and whatnot, it's really good to see that part of the academy, coming to fruition. And he's going to be massive. And the fact that both of them have just signed new long-term contracts in the last couple of weeks really bodes well. And it shows that they're buying into what Mikel Arteta wants from the club moving forward.
Supposedly there was a story that United were, back in the day, they had a little trial with Martinelli and they rejected him saying he wasn't good enough. Does it feel good that you've got Martinelli now and he is good enough? He's phenomenal, actually. And
he is. And do you know what it is with youngsters? Because I've seen that image of Martinelli with Pogba when he was actually at Manchester United at their training complex and whatnot. And you know what? Because I've got into management now and because I'm seeing a lot of what goes on in academies, and my son was at an academy as well, I kind of see why some youngsters don't make it, because some youngsters don't develop as quick as others. Some, don't start growing till they're 18, 19, but yet clubs want them to be developed and be the next big thing by 15, 16, ready to burst onto the, first team scene by 16, like a Wayne Rooney, for example. But not every youngster is the same. Not every kid, can develop that quickly. And yeah, academies for me, that's a different subject that I don't really want to get onto, because I just don't think that they're the best things for some youngsters, in my opinion. I really don't. I think that they do more damage than good to some youngsters, and the way that they treat them, and the way that if you don't make it after your 2-3 years and you don't get into the scholarship or a pro contract, you're thrown onto the scrap heap. And it doesn't mean that you're poor or you're bad. You might just have to wait your time.
Yeah, true.
A few more years. Just want to ask you about the big news from today in the Premier League is that Man City have won their appeal on their 2-year ban in European football. What do you think about that? I can see already. Money talks. I think it was Gary Neville that turned around and said that UEFA should slap themselves in the face because it's an absolute farce, to be honest. And I know people are saying, they only got fined £10 million because they were non-cooperation is the reasoning behind it, not because they were guilty. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're not cooperating, you're guilty. Mm. It's like going to the police and getting arrested and being no comment. You know that they're hiding something. So if Manchester City were genuinely, honest about everything, they would have cooperated from the beginning. Why are you getting a £10 million fine? But then 10 million to Manchester City is £5 to me and you.
Yeah, true.
It's a slap on the wrist. It's a farce. And the fact that they get given a 2-year ban and then the sport of arbitration go and completely switch it around and say, nah, nothing at all. I don't know why there's FFP. Mm. I would love someone to give me a valid reason as to why. We all know why it was supposedly introduced. Has it been implemented? Not in my opinion. I just find it a joke. I don't want to say too much because I'm not on my own channel and there's certain things I can't get away with saying. And it's like, I see so much going on in football. I just see so many lower league teams struggling. And I know, look, it's not Manchester City's job to make sure that teams are not struggling at the lower leagues or non-league or anything else. But it just really annoys me when there's such a divide between the top to the bottom. And we all try and, hear the FA and everyone talk about how, it's all one organisation. Remember this, whether you're in non-league or whether you're all the way up to, the Premier League, you're all governed by the FA. But yet there's such a divide. And there's teams after the coronavirus that are struggling. They can't meet financial needs and clubs are folding in non-league from steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you've got Manchester City getting a £10 million fine and they're just writing out a cheque like, yeah, go on, off you go. And
it's crazy.
It just don't sit right with me. I'm not saying that Manchester City or United or Arsenal or all these big clubs should, help out the lower league teams and give them handouts and everything. I just think that it just doesn't balance right for me. Yeah. There's such a difference. And this is why you're seeing a lot of people now go into non-league football and why they've had enough of the Premier League and stuff, because they get more enjoyment out of non-league, because it's just, there's no VAR. There's a few scraps on the touchline and players flying. It's old school. It's like, it's proper football. Whereas the Premier League now, I love it, don't get me wrong, but it's just so watered down. Everything's VAR. You can't touch anyone anymore. Even, I look at the Eddie Nketiah sending off against Leicester. The guy's made a genuine attempt to win the ball. There was no malice in his tackle in any way, shape or form. He was inches late. And yes, under the letter of the law in today's football, it's a red card. But the reality is that you should be able to look at that and say, look, he's made a genuine attempt to win the ball, not injure anyone or do anything. There's no malice in it. The player's fine. Let's get on with the game. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue. It's too watered down now. It's all become I don't like it. Maybe I'm old school. I loved it when players went flying in and smashed each other and there was punch-ups and everything. I was at Old Trafford in 1991 for the original Battle of Old Trafford, Arsenal-Man United, where Nigel Winterburn's on the floor and Brian McClare and Dennis Irwin are kicking him, and then Rocky Rocastle and Tony Adams are coming and grabbed him round the neck and thrown him over advertised boardings, and it's like, yes, that's what I like to see.
To be honest, we're talking about football now, and we're so right. Myself as well, watching United Arsenal back in the day, you had Vieira, Keane, you had Ian Wright, Schmeichel used to have that little rivalry. There's always been so much emotion, so much passion in the past that I'm not saying they don't have the same emotion now. I just feel like, and what you were saying, it has been watered down. Football's become very PG.
Politics.
Yeah. So it is crazy at the moment. But I wanted to ask you, just going back to your club, summer transfer window is going to come up very soon. What do Arsenal need to do in this summer to fight for that top four, fight for that league?
Spend some money.
And what positions would you say, though? What positions? And if you had any players in mind, what players would you say?
Is that a trick question?
It's a serious question. I know Arsenal fans. I know. The problem is that
I think we know. I think even non-Arsenal fans, I reckon a blind person would know where we need fixing. My God, we need defenders. We need to sort it out. We've got one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League in Bernd Leno. Looking at Martinez, since Leno's injury, we've got a very good number two that will push Bernd Leno all the way. I think in the left-back position, we've brought in the likes of Kieran Tierney, and he's been absolutely exceptional since the lockdown and showing exactly what he can do. It's the centre of defence is the first place. Now, I know we've got William Saliba that's come in, but he's a kid, despite how good he is.
Supposedly he's doing really well. Like he's
unbelievable, but he's not played a single minute for Arsenal, and he's already our best centre back.
Okay,
that says it all. But we need somebody there. We need a Dea Upamecano from RB Leipzig, someone like him. For me, I've been saying this guy's name for over 2 years, and people were like, "What are you on about?" And I'm like, "Trust me, Dea Upamecano." I did a video on him about 2 years ago. And his defensive partner at RB Leipzig. And I said, either one of them two. I said, I'm telling you, they are unbelievable. And the fact that he's got a release clause for under £50 million in today's market, you are not getting a centre-back like that.
It's a bargain.
For that kind of price. It's a bargain, in my opinion. Go and get him. And then we need the centre midfield. We need a Thomas Partey. That's again, another player that has a release clause for under £50 million. You are not finding a player like that for that kind of money again. People that didn't realise about Thomas Partey finally realised about him when Atletico Madrid beat Liverpool in the Champions League before lockdown. And they were like, who the hell is this guy? He's a monster. And he's one of them players that he doesn't care if he's not the highlight or on the show reel at the end of the game. He leaves that to everybody in front of it. He's the kind of guy that celebrates a tackle. One of them, and he is exactly what Arsenal need, right in the middle of the spine. And then we need a creative midfielder as well, because since Aaron Ramsey left, we've had nobody that scores goals from midfield. Our highest goal scoring midfielder this season is Joe Willock. He's a kid and he hardly plays. Yeah. That says everything. I think Danny Ceballos has been brilliant over the last few weeks and starting to show that under Mikel Arteta, he can really, do something. But it's whether we can get another year's loan out of Real Madrid from him. I think we can. So if you added a Thomas Partey, you had Danny Ceballos, you had Granit Xhaka, and then you brought in a Philip Coutinho, for example, which could happen on loan because Barcelona need to get him off the wage bill. Yeah. Let's remember as well that his agent is David Luiz's agent.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could do something nice for us because you've made us, put another contract to your client for a year. So maybe you could help us out by giving Philip for a season. And if we go and do that, then we can challenge, and as long as we keep Oba, that's the most important thing. And I've had this discussion with Robbie. He doesn't play like a 31-year-old. He's never had a serious injury in his career. He plays like a 26, 27-year-old. And you're not going to find a player for less than £100 million that can score the goals that Oba scores for us. You physically ain't. Where are you going to find a player that scores his amounts of goals? The only players in the Premier League that have scored on his level are a Mo Salah, Harry Kane, Sergio Aguero. Now, Aguero is probably the only one that wouldn't cost over 100 million given his age.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, Mo Salah and whatnot, how much are you going to pay for him if you go to Liverpool and say, I want Mo Salah? Way over £100 million. You go to Tottenham for Harry Kane, how much are Tottenham going to demand? Way over £100 million. So it's imperative for me that we keep Oba. And if we keep him, and then you add to that Martinelli, Saka, Pepe, who I think is going to come good next season once he's fully adapted, and I've seen signs enough already. I think we've got enough there to really fight to get in that top four, and then we can start building from there.
Just final two questions. Ali will ask you about the sort of top four places, but the relegation battle. We know Norwich have been relegated. There's another two places up there, and it's very tight. You've got Aston Villa, West Ham, Bournemouth. You've got these teams sort of lingering in there. Who do you see getting relegated this year? We know Norwich have gone down. Which are the other two teams?
The thing is, I really like Bournemouth. I like them as a club. I think that they try and play football the right way. I think they've been very unfortunate this season. I think the people of Bournemouth are really nice. We've always had good times when we go down there. Plus, I get a stick of rock when I go to an away game, which is always handy. But I can't see them getting out of it. I know they beat Leicester, but I just can't see them getting out of it. Selfishly, I hope Watford survive. And the reason for that is because Troy Deeney's my mate.
Okay.
And on a selfish personal level, I don't want to see that happen to them because I know how much it would affect him and the team and everything. I still think it's going to be Aston Villa and Bournemouth. I just don't think that they're going to get enough. Aston Villa have still got to come not to the Emirates, but they've got to play us at Villa Park, actually, second from last game. And ironically, Watford's last game is at the Emirates. And I've already had a conversation with Troy not long ago. And I said to him, please, please, please get survival sorted before you come to the Emirates. Please, man. And I said, because we always banter when Arsenal play Watford. And, I absolutely terrorise him on the phone. And he gives me the stick just as much back. And that's what it's like. But I won't be. I can't banter him because that's, if there's something riding on that game, then obviously as an Arsenal fan, we've got to win.
Yeah.
I don't care. We've got to win regardless. But that personal side of me would be gutted. So I really hope Watford can make it secure before they come to the Emirates on the final game. But yeah, I think Villa and Bournemouth, I think they've got just too much to do and they've left it too little too late.
Well, just talking about the third and fourth spots, it's changing all the time. Last night, United looked like they were in third, back down to fifth, but obviously on a great run of form. So who do you think are actually going to get those third and fourth spots?
Anybody but Manchester United. Please, 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 please. If there's a God, if you're watching down, I'm sorry for any sin I've ever caused, any wrongdoing. Just please, please, please do not put Manchester United in the Champions League. Mainly because I know so many Manchester United fans and they're so cocky and I just can't handle it anymore. And I've had this argument with them and I've said, look, why are you so fixated with being ahead of Arsenal and laughing at us in 9th place? We've admitted that we're rubbish. We've been poor this season. We don't get away from that. And I'm so shameless in my banter. I immediately went online last night and started bantering Man United. I'm shameless. I don't care that we're 9th. It doesn't bother me that we just lost the North London derby in that respect. I'm still going to banter you because all I've heard over recent weeks is Pogba, Bruno, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's back at the wheel. And I'm like, oh my God, the bigger picture is that Manchester United are still over 20 points away from their two biggest rivals, Manchester City and Liverpool. Worry about why you're so far behind them, not why you're a few points ahead of Arsenal. That's the bigger picture. I think that for Manchester United fans, mocking teams like Arsenal makes them feel better for their own inadequacies. That's my opinion on it. Because you
don't want United there. You don't want United to get it.
No.
Who do you think's going to get it though? Who do you think are going to get those 3rd and 4th spots? I know you don't want United. Do you think they could?
I know. Well, they can because, sadly, they've got the easiest running. And there's another thing. I think that was fixed when the fixture list came out as well. They knew this was going to happen. But I'm just looking at it in an ideal world. I would love, like a Sheffield United or a Wolves to get in there, but I think they're too far behind and I don't think that they can get in there mathematically. I'm not sure. I think they can still get in there, but it ain't going to happen. And yeah, I'm going to have to say Chelsea and Leicester because they're the two that occupy them spots at the moment. And I don't like picking Chelsea because I hate them as well. Mm. And they're just everything about football that I hate because, 15 years ago, nobody knew who Chelsea were. They thought it was just a posh area of London. They didn't even know there was a football club in Chelsea because they had nothing until Roman come along and spent his money. But yeah, not Manchester United, please. Just anybody but United. It would just absolutely ruin the last of my summer. It would be coronavirus and Arsenal being rubbish, and this would just be the end. When I celebrated at 11:59 p.m. on New Year's Eve and counted down to 2020, I did not foresee what it was going to be like. If I could go back to that moment, I would freeze it right there and not go past it. Done.
Right, DT, it's a pleasure you being on. Honestly, it's for our first show, for the Box to Box show. We've got such a personality like you who's passionate about football, passionate about your team. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully, in the summer, we'll get to talk to you a little bit more about Arsenal's dealings. Hopefully, they'll buy a few players. They get their money out of their pocket and buy a few players. Let's not talk about the owners today because I know you're very passionate about them.
No, yeah, don't. No. Maybe we'll talk about the owners when you've introduced a bleep machine, so that you can. I want you to be able to put this onto YouTube and monetize it and not have to, get any strikes or anything else. So we'll save that one for another day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Guys, that was DT. Great to have him on. Thanks for joining us for part 1, but we aren't finished there. We have another special guest joining us talking about Liverpool's success.